Imagine moving into your dream home, only to find that you've stepped into a living nightmare. Chilling whispers in the dark, phantom eyes glowing from the windows, and something sinister that wakes you up every night at exactly 3:15 a.m. Could you stay another night? Welcome to the true story behind the Amityville Horror, where murder, mystery, and the supernatural collide in a house that still haunts the imagination. What really happened at 112 Ocean Avenue? Was it the work of evil spirits, an elaborate hoax, or something even darker? Let's dive into the most infamous haunted house case in American history. On the cold night of November 13th, 1974, a suburban home in Amityville became the scene of unspeakable horror. 23-year-old Ronald "Butch" DeFeo Jr. brutally gunned down 6 members of his own family as they slept, turning the large canal-side Dutch colonial house on Long Island into a chilling crime scene. His parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr. and Louise DeFeo, and his 4 siblings, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew, were all found in their beds, executed one by one. Butch first pointed the finger at a mob hitman, but when cracks in his story emerged, a more sinister explanation came to light. He claimed that voices inside his head commanded him to pull the trigger. Convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder, Butch DeFeo was sentenced to life behind bars, his motive clouded in mystery until his death in 2021. But this blood-soaked tragedy was only the beginning, setting the stage for the darkness that would soon consume the next family to call this house their home. In December 1975, a little over a year after the gruesome murders that stained its walls, George and Kathy Lutz purchased the infamous house at a bargain price of $80,000. They moved in, hopeful for a fresh start, bringing Kathy's 3 children, Daniel, Christopher, and little Missy, along with them. Though they knew the house's tragic past, they were certain they could turn it into a home filled with love and new beginnings. But the house had other plans. Within just 28 days, their dream turned into a living nightmare. Strange occurrences plagued the family, events so chilling, so unexplainable, that they fled the house in terror, leaving behind almost everything they owned. What happened in that house? The chilling events, immortalized in the 1977 book The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson and brought to life in countless movies, remain some of the most terrifying accounts of paranormal activity ever recorded. Aware of the property's dark history, the Lutz family took no chances. Shortly after moving in, they invited Father Ray Pecoraro, a Catholic priest, to bless their new home. As Father Pecoraro began the ritual, flicking holy water and reciting prayers, a sinister chill filled the air, and just as his voice echoed through the empty halls, a low, commanding voice interrupted him, a voice that did not belong to anyone in the room. "Get out," it growled, deep and menacing, as though the very walls of the house were speaking to him. Shaken but silent, the priest didn't mention the terrifying encounter to George or Kathy. He left the house quietly, carrying the weight of that dark warning with him. But the unease lingered, gnawing at his conscience. Less than a week later, he called the Lutzes and warned them to avoid that particular second-floor room, the former bedroom of Mark and John Matthew DeFeo, 2 of the murdered children. But his advice went unheeded. Kathy, unaware of the danger, pressed ahead with plans to turn that very room into a sewing room. What Father Pecoraro feared most was about to unfold. Soon it became clear that the priest's blessing had done little to exorcise any spirits that may have lingered in the home. George Lutz often described sudden, bone-chilling cold creeping through the house, even when the heating was roaring at full strength. Not just a draft or a cool breeze, but an unnatural, piercing cold that clung to him, as if the house itself was drawing warmth from his very soul. This, however, was just the beginning. To the disgust of the family, strange, sickening odors would waft through the rooms without warning. One moment it was the rancid stench of decaying flesh, thick and nauseating, filling the air. At other times, it was a sulfuric, almost hellish smell, as though something had crawled up from the bowels of the earth. No matter how much they scrubbed or aired the house, the foul odors would always return, as if the house was trying to tell them something or someone. Further unsettling developments unfolded as winter progressed. Just as the world outside was frozen and lifeless, so the Lutz family found themselves tormented by swarms of fat, buzzing flies, which infested the house and particularly the sewing room. The thick clouds of them, which blackened the windows and filled the air with their relentless droning hum, defied all logic. The icy weather should have kept them at bay, but yet they flocked to the house, drawn to an unseen source of decay. No matter how many of the creatures the Lutz family killed or how often they cleaned, the flies returned. More and more, as if summoned by some unseen force. It wasn't just an infestation. It felt like an omen. And then there were the strange sounds. Throughout the house, the Lutz family was haunted by a symphony of mysterious noises, constant, unnerving, and without any apparent source. Banging and knocking echoed through the walls, sometimes soft, other times loud enough to shake the very foundation. But they weren't just random sounds. George often described hearing what could only be compared to a marching band warming up in the living room, clashing cymbals, discordant horns, and the rhythmic pounding of drums. Yet when he entered the room, the air was thick with silence, as if the house itself had swallowed the noise. Of all the terrifying claims that emerged from the Lutz family's time in the house, few were as disturbing as the green gelatinous slime they reported oozing from the walls of the house and seeping through keyholes. But the horror didn't end there. Both George and Kathy reported seeing something even more terrifying, glowing red eyes staring back at them through the windows in the dead of night. They were cold, predatory eyes that watched, unblinking, from the darkness beyond the glass. But it wasn't just George and Kathy who saw them. Their young daughter, Missy, had her own terrifying encounters. She spoke of an imaginary friend named Jody, whom she described as a pig-like creature with those same glowing red eyes. To Missy, Jody was a friend. But to George and Kathy, it suggested something far more sinister. As their time at the house wore on, the psychological terror took a physical turn. Kathy Lutz became the target of relentless attacks, her body marked by mysterious welts that appeared without explanation, as if unseen hands had clawed at her in the dead of night. But the most horrifying experience came when she claimed to be lifted from her bed by an invisible force. Helpless, she floated above the mattress, her body suspended in midair, as though the house itself had taken hold of her. Another night, while standing before the mirror, Kathy's reflection warped before her eyes. Her own face melted away, replaced by the withered, grotesque visage of an old crone, her skin sagging, her eyes hollow. She stared in horror, unable to comprehend what she was seeing, as the mirror seemed to mock her with a twisted version of herself. George, too, was not spared. He reported feeling violent, physical blows, pushed, slapped, and struck by something he couldn't see. Each attack was sudden, brutal, and left him reeling, as if the house had come alive, determined to break them both. But of all the terrifying events that unfolded within those cursed walls, perhaps the most disturbing was the slow, sinister transformation of George Lutz himself. A man with no history of paranormal experiences, George began to change almost immediately after moving in. His once warm demeanor grew cold and distant, replaced by an unnatural obsession with the fireplace. He would spend hours staring into the flames, as though something deep within the fire was calling to him, drawing him closer. But it wasn't just his behavior around the fire that alarmed his family. George became increasingly irritable, his anger simmering just beneath the surface, erupting in sudden violent outbursts. The house seemed to be feeding on him, twisting his mind, warping his personality. Every night, without fail, George would awaken at exactly 3:15 a.m., the same time the DeFeo murders had been committed. It was as if the house was pulling him into its dark past, luring him towards the violence that had stained its halls. After less than a month of enduring the relentless torment, the Lutz family could take no more. The house, with its sinister presence and escalating horrors, had broken them. One night, they fled in utter terror, abandoning their dream home and everything they owned: clothes, furniture, cherished possessions, even Missy's beloved toys, all left behind as they ran for their lives. While George Lutz maintained that events in the book that followed were mostly true, and went on, along with his wife Kathy, to pass a polygraph test relating to their experiences in the house, skeptics have long questioned the validity of the Lutz's story. It wasn't long before their harrowing tale caught the attention of the media and of renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Drawn to the house's malevolent reputation, the Warrens conducted their own investigation. Lorraine, a gifted psychic, sensed it immediately. An overwhelming dark energy, so powerful it seemed to seep from the very walls. She later described the house as being infested by a demonic presence, unlike anything she had ever encountered. Ed, a seasoned demonologist, echoed her fear, calling it one of the most terrifying cases they had ever faced. Multiple scientific investigations followed, but no further evidence of paranormal activity was found. House. More significantly, various owners who have lived in the house since the Lutzes moved out have not reported anything out of the ordinary, leading some to believe the haunting was a hoax. William Weber, the defense attorney for Ronald DeFeo Jr., added fuel to the skepticism by claiming that he and the Lutzes had fabricated the story of the haunting as a way of profiting from its dark past. However, the Lutzes vehemently denied these allegations, insisting that what they had experienced was no fabrication, but a horrifying reality. Despite the doubts, the story of the Amityville Horror has persisted, becoming a permanent fixture in pop culture, fueled by the success of Jay Anson's book and its numerous film adaptations. The Amityville Horror case remains one of the most infamous and debated tales of paranormal activity, a haunting blend of fact, fiction, and lingering controversy. Whether the terrifying events were real, exaggerated, or born from pure imagination, the chilling combination of a brutal mass murder and the horrifying claims of a haunted house have cemented the story's place in the darker corners of our collective psyche. Decades later, the legend of the Amityville Horror continues to captivate and terrify, leaving us all to wonder, what really happened within those cursed walls?